YouTube, this is Fear the Ghost, and currently we are going to be looking at my sailor cards. If you don't know how I made this, I actually made this using Yu-Gi-Oh! Cardmaker.net. So as you can see here, I gave them an XYZ. I couldn't think of I guess I could have given them a fusion, but I didn't think synchro would be very practical. But you can use 2 or more level 4 sailor monsters, and it gets the following effects for each sailor monster with a different name attached to it as an XYZ material. So it's not just, you can't just have 4 level 4 sailor monsters on board and overlay that, and 2 have the same name and 2 not. And when you overlay them, you'd only get, if there's 3 different names, you'd get the 3 or more. But if you manage to use all 5, then you get, well, if you have 1, you get 2,000 attack and 2,000 defense. So you'd become at 2,500 in both. If you have 2 or more, then Sailor Army cannot be targeted by an attack while you control another Sailor monster. 3 or more, it can't be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. I forgot the apostrophe there. 4 or more, this card cannot be targeted by your opponent's card effects, so no 101. And then you only have 1 detach effect, which you need all 5 to activate, and it's probably the best thing on the card. If you have all 5, you can detach all materials to send all cards on the field and in your opponent's hand to the graveyard. And if you do, special summon 1 sailor monster detached to activate this effect. You cannot deal damage the turn you activate this effect, and you must skip your next 2 draw phases. So you cannot draw for the next 2 turns. And you can't deal damage the turn you use it. But it's still a pretty powerful effect. It's why it's got those downsides. Next up we have the 3 Sailor Cats. I called them Sailor Cats because I wanted to make them searchable in the deck, as well as possibly have their own archetype depending on support I may give them later on. Sailor Cat Artemis. If this card is sent to the graveyard by the effect of a sailor card, immediately add it to your hand. And if you do, your opponent discards 1 card. The effect of Sailor Cat Artemis can only be activated once per turn. So makes your opponent discard a card, but you'd have to send it to the graveyard by the effect of Sailor card. Then we have Sailor Cat Diana. Flip. Special summon 1 Sailor Cat monster from your deck in face down defense position. If you control 3 or more Sailor monsters, you can discard 1 card to add this card from your graveyard to your hand. Now, this is not a cost. I would like to point this out. This was not meant to be a cost, which is why it is not a cost. It is not my misdoing the effect. It's because the entire point of the Sailor Cats is to put themselves back into your hand. That is pretty much the entire point of the 3 Sailor Cats, because the support for Sailor Cats needs all 3 of them in your hand, which is the only reason why they all try to go there. We have Luna. Luna's flip effect is you add 1 Sailor Cat card from your graveyard to your hand. And there are some Sailor Cat spells and traps. If this card is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, add it to your hand. So, yeah, I did forget the semicolon. Next up we have Sailor Cat Advice. Discard 1 Luna monster, 1 Artemis monster, and 1 Diana monster from your hand to draw 1 card for each Sailor monster with a different name you control. You can only activate one Sailor Cat advice per turn. So it is addable back with Luna, but there isn't any way to really put Luna back onto the field easily. Well, there are a couple of ways, but you'll see a little more later. Next up, we have Sailor Cat support. Activate only if you control 2 or more Sailor monsters. Reveal 1 Luna, Artemis, and Diana monster in your hand to negate the activation of a spell or trap card, monster effect, or the summon of a monster. So this is one of their best cards. You do need to control 2 or more Sailor monsters, and you also need Luna, Artemis, and Diana in your hand. So it's not very likely you'll be able to pull it off first turn, but it is possible. Next up, we have Sailor Moon. When this card is normal or special summoned, you can add 1 Sailor card from your deck to your hand. Now, I want you to know this. All of the Sailor monsters have different levels. Except for the Sailor Cats, they have 1 through 3. And then you have Sailor Moon, the different Sailor Warriors, I guess is what I'll call them, have different levels. So Sailor Moon is the only level 4, Mercury's level 3, Mars is level 5, Jupiter's 2, and Venus is 1. When this card is normal summon, you can add 1 Sailor card from your deck to your hand, and she only has 1000 attack, and she has 2000 defense. Next up, we have Sailor Mercury at level 3. When this card is normal summoned, you can special summon 1 Sailor monster from your deck. And if you do, make this card's level 4. So that's the main thing that happens. The Sailor monsters make themselves level 4 if their effects are activated. So if your opponent plays a Skill Drain or Phoenix Chain, you're going to have a bad time. Next up, we have Sailor Mars. This card cannot be normal summoned or set. This card can only be special summoned by the effect of a Sailor card. I need to put quotations around Sailor. When this card is special summoned, you can add 2 Sailor cards from your grave to your hand, and if you do, make this card's level 4. She's the only one that actually has any attack or defense, except for Sailor Moon. She does have 2000 defense, but the rest really don't have anything. Like, Venus has 0, 0, and Jupiter has 0, 200. Mercury's got 500, 500. But Jupiter's effect is, when this card is normal summon, you can special summon 1 Sailor monster from your graveyard. And if you do, this card's level becomes make this card's level 4. Next up, we have Sailor Venus. If you activate a Sailor spell or trap, you can special summon 1 Sailor monster from your hand, deck, or graveyard. And if you do, make this card's level 4. You can only use the effect of Sailor Venus once per turn. So it's pretty good, but you need her on field, and you need a Sailor spell that you can activate. Which not all the Sailor spells and traps are very easy to activate. Next up, we have Sailor Unity, which is next to Sailor Cat Advice, or Sailor Cat Support, probably has the best effect. But you can only use Sailor Unity once per turn. Activate only if you control Sailor Moon. This card's activation cannot be negated. Special summon 1 Sailor Mars, Sailor Mercury, Sailor Venus, and Sailor Jupiter from your graveyard. But their effects are negated, and you can't special summon monsters except for Sailor monsters the turn you activate this effect. Banish this card from your graveyard. This is a quick effect. Sailor monsters you currently control are unaffected by other card effects and become level 4. You can only activate Sailor Unity once per duel. So this is the main card you'll use to get Sailor Army, but it can only be used once per duel. And you do need Sailor Moon on field to activate it. And you need all 4 of your other Sailors already in the graveyard to use it. Next up, we have Sailor Mercury's Plan. Activate only if you control 3 or more Sailor monsters. Target 1 monster your opponent controls. Send it to the graveyard, and if you do, both players gain life points equal to that monster's attack on the field. If you control Sailor Mercury, your opponent does not gain life points. So this is I tried to make it interesting. Except for Sailor Unity, all of the Sailor cards can be activated just by controlling Sailor monsters. But I did try my best to give them special effects based on if something has to do with if I either control the Sailor that's based on, or like Sailor Spirit here, which I'll get into in a moment. Activate only if you control no monsters. Special summon one Sailor monster from your graveyard, and if you do, send one Sailor monster from your deck to the graveyard. If you send Sailor Mars to the graveyard by this effect, you may instantly special summon it. So, there is that. The monsters themselves really aren't that terribly good. Probably the best one would be Luna, but I did do my best to make the spells and traps they get pretty decent. Activate only if you control a face-up Sailor monster, discard one card, and destroy 2 cards your opponent controls. So the discard is not a cost. You don't have to target. If you control face-up Sailor Jupiter, this card gains this additional effect. Your opponent discards 1 card. Your opponent also discards 1 card. So, and then we have Sailor Idol Snare. This is the only one, except for Sailor Unity, that you need to control a specific Sailor. Activate only if you control Sailor Venus. Oh, it's Sailor Idol Snare, because if you did not know, Sailor Venus is actually an idol as well. Take control of 1 monster your opponent controls as long as this card is face-up on the field. You can only control 1 Sailor Idol Snare. During your opponent's standby phase, discard 1 Sailor card or destroy this card. Notice, once again, I did not make these discardings a cost on any of these cards, and I did do that on purpose. Last, we have Sailor Transformation. Sailor Transformation is a field spell, and what it does is you can discard 1 Sailor Cat monster from your hand to the graveyard. From your hand to special oh yeah. Through all of this, you don't have to discard it to the graveyard, you just have to discard it, so macro will not stop the stuff like Sailor Transformation and all that. You can only use this effect of Sailor Transformation once per turn. Oh, you special summon a Sailor monster from your deck. If this card would be destroyed, you may discard 1 Sailor Cat monster from your hand instead. You may only use this effect up to twice per turn. Now, the reason why I said up to twice per turn is because of our friend Luna up here, which if you guys hadn't already noticed, none of these are costs, so it's considered being sent to the graveyard by a card effect. So, I wasn't really thinking too hard whenever I did this, and it became more apparent to me what was going to happen later. Luna can actually be very abused by these cards. I need, like, what I really should do is I should make it so that Luna's effect... Okay, I'm going to say this now. I did re-edit Luna's effect. It only works if it's sent to the graveyard by a Sailor card effect. Just like our friend Artemis up here. Luna is actually worse than Artemis because it can just add itself repeatedly throughout the entire turn. So the reason why I put the limitation to saving itself on Sailor Transformation is because you could literally just sit there the entire time and discard Luna over and over and over, and it would never be destroyed. So that's the reason why. Artemis, I limited to specifically Artemis itself once per turn, because otherwise it could be very abusive, especially with the field spell. And then we have Little Diana. I really like Little Diana. She's the only way to special summon the Sailor Cats. except for Sailor Support. Well, anyway, those are my Sailor cards. Bye!